Happy New Year, everybody. We're on the verge, or I don't know when exactly it'll come out, close to knowing Mike, who does fantastic work with the putting these together. But this is our annual in memoriam, in memory of certain artists who passed away in 24. And as we all know, every year we see uh, some of the people that we went to go see and we admired most. It was like I was telling Dave earlier, uh, when we were young and someone would die or pass away, and it'd be like, oh, look, Count Basie passed, or Duke, and we were just like, well, are we who? But now we're at that age where these were our contemporaries. These were our people. Hell, they're close to our age, some of them. So it's interesting, and of course, there's always way too many and way too much great music, and a lot of guys that really contributed to music in a lot of different ways that passed away on this list. And as always, I thought we had it was a great playlist. I listened to it twice in one day because I thought it was so good. I listened to it in the morning when I walk, and then I was driving around, and I kept it on because I wanted to familiar. But because there's so many great songs on here, there really is, and uh, we'll talk about them. And so, without further ado, I suppose I started off with obviously it's not obvious. I use that word. Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead. He passed away. I'm a Deadhead. I saw the Grateful Dead quite a few times. Phil Lesh definitely made an impact on my life for sure. He's one of the best. I chose this song. In Grateful Dead lore, there were two songs. There were actually three songs that never got played in concert, and one was uh, France, because it's just a horrible song, even though we played it. Pride of Cucamonga, which Phil wrote, and Unbroken Chain. And for a lot of years, everyone loves Unbroken Chain, but it never got played. Well, in their last year, when they were together with Jerry, 1995, there was a bust out, and after they came out in '74, and 21 years later, they busting out Unbroken Chain, and of course, Deadheads went bonkers, and that's one of the reasons I chose the song. Usually, most people identify Phil with Box of Rain. That's his most iconic song for sure, and it's about the passing away. But I always loved Unbroken Chain. I just think it's such a great song. Uh, it has all the elements of the Dead in 1974. It was written by uh, John Peterson. He was a novelist. So anyway, it's a different thing. It's off Mars Hotel. But what do you think? Mike?
Yeah, I love the whole album Mars Hotel, which this is off of, and I have heard this song many times. I have a couple of questions. Well, first thing I'll say, I like that they go into that jam kind of session there for a short period of time. It's very abbreviated, but it's like, okay, we're getting this song. Now here's a little encapsulated what the Dead sometimes does. It's much more in the concerts, but that was kind of nice. And they go back into the song. That's pretty cool. And I will say also that for years, I thought this is Bob Weir singing. I kind of think I thought that for every song Phil Lesh sang on. Just, I guess I'm an eternal Dead newbie. And then, and then I have okay, there's two questions I have. What is that sound that
No,
kind of, it's like chimes or something? It
uh,
cuts through several times, and that's my first. And then I don't know, what is your thoughts about what this is about? You know, when you listen to it.
I think it's about bonds that are created throughout life, and how people come together. I would be remiss, let me just say, tag on that Phil did carry the torch way past when the Grateful Dead passed away, so he should also be applauded for continuing and bringing back Pride of Cucamonga. But no, I think the song is about an unbroken chain, and because they were probably out there a little. Unbroken chain, both physically and mentally and spiritually throughout those things. If that's what you wanna, if that's what you're into, but yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. So what about you, Dave?
I'm not as steeped in all the Grateful Dead music, but this one just is in that perfect Grateful Dead wheelhouse. I like the song a lot. I've played it a couple times this last week. You know, I wish in a way, you know, Phil Lesh, he played bass, right?
Right.
Okay, so we don't have the luxury of doing this, but you know, you see some of these shows with Rick Beato and some of these other people, and they break down the songs or whatever. What would be cool is I tried to listen for the bass parts, you know, and again, I don't know that he's necessarily renowned for being like one of the top bass players, you know, of rock and roll or anything like that. I mean, you hear his name sometimes brought up, but you got to have a great rhythm section. You got to be able to do that. That's what makes the band so good. And sometimes it's just playing behind the scenes and not being spectacular, right? Just playing with the percussion, playing with the piano, playing with the bass, and you need all of that to make great songs and make great albums. And I think that's what Phil Lesh did. And then, like you said, he was a founding member, and he was founding member, I guess, and
He was,
and then
he was classically trained, so that helped.
right.
And
So
still a
all of
classically
that.
trained
But I
musician.
kind of wish we had like if I had one of those soundboards or whatever, right? And you could okay, let's just isolate the vocals on this one, or let's just isolate the, you know, you'd see some of the brilliance that comes out not only with this song, but with a lot of the ones on our playlist. So I kind of catch myself on this playlist specifically trying to listen for that person who had passed away, whether it was a drummer, whether it's a bass player, whether it's a singer, whoever it is. So anyway, but yeah, I like the tune.
I hate to interrupt, but I've left something out that really needs to be mentioned. That smile. It's like, I can't tell you how many, if I've seen a photo where Phil Lesh didn't have that smile on his face, you know? It's like when we saw Adrian Belew, the guy's smiling, he's having a blast. So sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to
Oh, no, well,
make note
Phil
of that.
was for a long time Phil in the band because he didn't. There was always the joke, let Phil sing, and so of course he'd have his moments. And it wasn't until the '90s that he really started singing more like songs like "Broken Arrow," and he'd sing some Dylan songs. But yeah, he was back there. And to Dave's point, he is considered the godfather of modern jam band bass players. They all because he changed it. He didn't just keep the rhythm. He had because he composed his own music. He was classically trained. He had perfect pitch, and so you know, and especially in a band like the Dead, you know, when you stick someone in there where these guys are all, and he's there, but he added such an element. But yeah, he is revered as one of the best, especially in the jam band scene. He is, and everyone wanted to play with him after he finished with the Dead. I mean, he would have things called Phil and Friends, and he got any jam band member probably played with Phil Lesh from 1995 till even up until he passed away, which was like 2 months. He was still playing concerts. So yeah.
Well, my first choice, the second song on the playlist was by a guy named Mike Pinder, and he's one that you probably wouldn't be able to pick out of a lineup or name him necessarily either, because he was just one of the core members, a founding member of the Moody Blues back in the day. Early on, him and Denny Lane were, you know, the composers of the songs, and then once Justin Hayward and John Lodge came on the scene, he kind of took a little bit of backseat. He'd still on every album he'd have, you know, one or two songs that he had written and produced and did those. This song I picked was called "Lost in a Lost World," which was off the Seventh Sojourn album. And if you know anything about Moody Blues, there was a period of time where they were just prolific from probably from 68, 69 through 75 or so. They were just cranking out album after album. And there was, I think, about 7 albums that they had put out there where they had reached popularity and started really hitting their stride. Mike Pinder, though, played the keyboards and was actually instrumental, pun intended, in bringing the mellotron out as an instrument. He was one of the first to experiment with it and use it on in the late '60s with the Moody Blues. And what else was I going to say about Mike Pinder? He did retire a little early from the band. They went on into the '80s and the '90s, and I think it was like in the mid to late '70s, '77. I think that he he bowed out of the limelight and everything with that. But again, just a phenomenal musician. You have to kind of listen for his piano and the keyboards and the stuff. But this song he wrote and sang on, Lost in a Lost World. I didn't know that the next song was going to be a King Crimson song. We'll get to in a minute. But had I known that, I would have switched it up and done a different song, because I had in my playlist from an album called On the Threshold of a Dream. He had a song called Have You Heard Part One, The Voyage, and then Have You Heard Part Two. You put them all three together, it's about seven minutes or so. It's not super long, but it would have flowed nicely into Mike's selection with the King Crimson, because it's the same kind of a feel to it. You don't get that as much with Lost in the Lost World. It's more of like a pop song kind of thing with it, but always liked this song, always liked this album, and so gonna miss him. One last thing I gotta say about Mike Pinder: after he retired from Moody Blues, he went on and did some solo albums, but he also did some like albums where he would narrate and talk, spoken word type thing with music in the background. And I came across this one thing, and I could not find it on Apple Music or or wherever. So I'm going to throw it out to you so somebody else could look to listen. But also, more importantly, Jose and Mike, there's a thing called, he did this thing. It's about 10 minutes long. It's a story called The Gifts of Wally Dodd, and it blows me away of the message of it, but how he narrates it, how the music in the background, the story of it. If you get a chance, look up The Gifts of Wally Dodd by Mike Pinder. Had I been able to find it, I probably would have said, I need a long song here, and I would have probably played that one. But anyway, that's my journey down Mike Pinder lane.
Well, all I know about Moody Blues was learned from Dave Duke, and he gave me a master's course in all things Moody Blues for sure. We listened to a heck of a lot of Moody Blues, uh, hanging out together, and yeah, and I distinctly remember this song and thinking, man, this is such a beautiful song, and yeah, you're the one who turned me on to Moody Blues. I love the Moody Blues. You know, you just couldn't get enough at sometimes. I even think when Mike saw one of my hard drives, and I have all the Moody Blues albums on there. Don't ask me. It's just one of those things. And we got to see him, which was even better. So no, I just thought this was fantastic. And I'll disagree with you a little in the sense, not that I don't disagree with you that there was the songs about to transit, but the transition between these two songs is really good. You go from, your song, and then we'll go into Mike's eventually, but the drumming coming out of that is just a great transition when you're listening to this playlist.
Well, they're all three in the that mid 70s kind of thing.
Right.
That same feel. Before Mike comments, though, I have to ask you one question. Let's see how quick you are on your Moody Blues trivia. So way back in the day when we were making mixtapes, I put a song on, which is another song that he wrote and sang, a song called "The Best Way to Travel." Do you remember that song? Think is the best way to travel. It's all a dream. But anyway, there's a noise and a sound in that song. What does that sound remind you of?
It's the song. It's the shake machine at McDonald's.
It was that. It was like the sound.
There's a line and there's like, you can fly high as a kite if you want to, right? Something like that.
But we laughed at that sound. We go, what's that sound? What's that sound? And it was the sound of that when the shake machine runs out of liquid in the back and starts sputtering and making that sound when you're cleaning. So anyway,
I never forgot you saying that to me, and every time that song out, that's exactly what I would think. I was like, oh my god.
I'm glad you remembered it. Sorry to get off on a tangent on that, but that's Mike Pinder. That's Mike Pinder, The Best Way to Travel.
As far as the McDonald's thing, I never worked there myself, but now I'm glad to now have that little bit of McDonald's lore in my memory banks.
That's probably why it's broken all the time, because of that sound. No, I'm just kidding.
And don't get me started on that. Anyway, McDonald's and ice cream. All right, yeah, no. So this Moody Blues song, the album in particular, I bought the 8-track. When my car had an 8-track player way back early '80s, and I got this because of that song. I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band, but then it was like, on 8 tracks, it's just an endless loop. And I just had that in my car forever. And I was listening to, I got it right before I drove out to my granddad's funeral, and then listened to it all the way up there and all the way back. And so it's kind of has some mournful qualities to it. This song, it's talking about some, uh, trouble in our world, and what have you, lost in a lost world. And so that's kind of always have that thing. And I didn't listen to it for a long time, but then last year I kind of picked it up again. It just, one of the songs came up on one of my, the Apple Music, when it gives you choices, or it just starts playing stuff. And so I started listening to it again, and lo and behold, you put it on there. So it's a great record. The the Mellotron, and that is a really good transition into what mine was, which is Epitaph by King Crimson, written by Peter Sinfield, and he's the person who died in 2024. But that whole album, that was their first album, Court of the Crimson King, and that was very prominent. They used that a lot, particularly in that record. And this song in particular, I think it leads in with the Mellotron and the drums. I agree with you, Jose. I thought it wasn't intentional. I just thought, Epitaph seemed a good name for this topic. But also I really like that song. I will concede it's very long. It's about, well, for them, it's not long, but it's 7+, maybe 8 minutes. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me, but I love this song. So he wrote lyrics. He was with them for their first 4 albums. Kind of like I had somebody last year who died, who wrote lyrics to a lot of the Procol Harum songs. He was kind of a similar figure, I think, Peter Sinfield, except he did play a little bit. I think it was some kind of keyboard or something with them some, but he was mainly just wrote the lyrics. And so this song, I have it written here. So it's Epitaph, and I'll kind of read a couple of the lyrics because I really think they're interesting. They really give you this kind of surreal, hellish kind of image. Okay. The wall on which the prophets wrote is cracking at the seams. Upon the instruments of death, the sunlight brightly gleams. When every man is torn apart with nightmares and with dreams, will no one lay the laurel wreath, and the silence drowns the screams. So, whoa. The song Court of the Crimson King, he also wrote, which is really like a hellish imagery. Although he said that song, he wasn't describing hell. The Crimson King wasn't, Beelzebub or whoever. It was like just a corrupt king with an evil, court and all that. But that's kind of his lyrics. This song, it's kind of basically what I heard it described as, and it makes sense, kind of being lost, not really having being confused in life, not really having a clear path, which way you're going. The fear that maybe you'll go your whole life without ever really knowing, until the very end. I forget. Oh, okay, I'm gonna do one more. Confusion will be my epitaph as I crawl a cracked and broken path. If we make it, we can all sit back and laugh, but I fear tomorrow I'll be crying. So anyway, okay, I went on that quite a bit, but I have, so he also went on, he performed with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, particularly on, I think he wrote part of Carnival number 9 off Brain Salad Surgery. He wrote I Believe in Father Christmas, the lyrics to that. These are all things I learned researching for this. We've put that song on before. I love that song. He wrote for other people, including Cher. And produced many albums. So yeah, I thought we had to put him out there. So
Well, I thought it went real well after Lost in the Lost World, the Moody Blues with Mike Pinder and stuff. But I think what happens is, and I think we've said something like this before. I had this album. I listened to this album over and over again, but somewhere along the early marriage days, I got rid of all my albums. And so, did I get some playlists? And did I have some songs? And I did some stuff. But if I ever was going to say, oh, let me go listen to some King Crimson, I didn't have an album to pull out and listen to it. So I'd listened to Court of the Crimson King. I listened to some songs like that, but I'd forgotten. I mean, I forget the songs that's number 3 or 4 or 5 on the album a lot of times, and it's refreshing that you put something like this on, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how great that song was and how great that album is. And then again with the passing of Peter Sinfield, that's a time to honor him and say, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was the writer of many of the lyrics of those famous songs and those that were out there for King Crimson. So again, I thought it was a good choice, and I liked it. Like the title too, it kind of goes with the theme too, with In Memory.
Right. Yeah, it's a great again, I'll mention it's a great transition into from Lost World into this song, and I call it an elegant song. It's just such an elegant song. And if you're gonna read, you have to sing it like confusion is it separate. I mean, it's so powerful when he sings it. When you hear that lyric
Yeah.
on there, it just bursts through the song. So yeah, just a fantastic song, and of course, it's kind of resurgence thanks to Mike about listening to King Crimson, because first he encouraged me to go see the Beat with that we saw, members, of King Crimson, even though they didn't play a lot of the other King Crimson stuff, but that, and then of course I went to Half Price, bought a King Crimson album, so I'm kind of going a little King Crimson crazy here, so to speak. But just thought, yeah, just such an elegant and beautiful song, and again, I think that's what makes these playlists so great is just listening to some of these songs that are so profound, and that's one of them. So moving on, did anyone Mike, do you want to add anything? Okay,
No, I'm good. I will second what you said about me reading that does not capture kind of the agony Greg Lake singing those lyrics. I just as on their own, I think they're very interesting lyrics, but you're
Right.
right. You've got to hear it. We
Right.
play it here, but copyright, we can't do it.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. When you hear that, the way he sings it on that, man, it's just, man, it just cuts through that song. So the next one was I went with Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers. Again, the Allman Brothers a huge influence in my life. I've played them a lot, and if you don't think Dickie Betts is just because he doesn't have the last name Allman isn't probably one of the single most influential people in that band, yeah, you're mistaken, because he contributed so much to the Allman Brothers, and even in this song I chose was Seven Turns, which is kind of goes with the theme, but it's apparently Native American lore. There you catch yourself with 7 major decisions in your life that kind of dictate where you go, and then he kind of went off that. I guess he was encouraged to write a song similar to Blue Skies, which of course I think is just how do you do that? But he came up with this in '90s when the Allman Brothers were kind of in an influx. They were kind of transitioning. They had different lineups, and then Warren Haynes was about to join them, but Dickie Betts was always there, and he came up with this song. And I just think it's such a great song and such a beautiful song. And I don't know, yeah, and y'all can talk about the interpretation of what you think he's singing about when he's, someone's calling for you, someone's calling my name. How I always think of it, I think death is inevitable, and whatever you believe, if someone's calling, I think that's what he's trying to allude to. Something's calling your name. So, but it could be, about a love or something like that. So anyway, I just thought it's a tough loss with Dickie Betts. Yeah, he had his falling outs with the Almonds later on. Had a lot of issues, a lot of personal issues, but in the end, you can't overlook how many truly great songs, Jessica, Melissa, brothers and sisters, if you just listen to that album, and a tremendous guitar player, to top it off. So I thought, and I thought this song was kind of nice to kind of pay tribute to him.
Yeah, I remember this from being on the radio. This is like you said, it's later. Allman Brothers. It's you've so far been the one putting on Allman Brothers songs, which is great. But I've been remiss because I loved their music for years and years. Probably even before I knew either of you, I was listening to them. So it's great that you're representing him. And he did. I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but I feel like he got overshadowed by Dwayne Allman as a guitarist, just because of Allman dying young, and he
Right.
was out there and all that. And I don't know. And he was a fantastic, amazing guitar player. But this guy also was an amazing guitar player, kind of a backbone to the band, and you
Oh,
know,
well, it's the
and
mythos. So if someone dies, they're always going to be great in that time period. And Dwayne Allman is great, but yeah,
yeah.
he,
He also didn't he write In Memory of Elizabeth Reed?
hell
That is
yeah.
just listen to the I would have put, if you hadn't gotten to it, I would have probably put that on, even though it doesn't feature his voice. It's an instrumental. But there's a version at Fillmore that's like 12 minutes long or something ridiculous. That's just going this jam where he and others are just going off on this stuff. And yeah, he was a great musician. And not much else. Oh, as far as somebody's calling your name, I kind of go with your interpretation, although I might add that may it could also be like calling you through your life, through your decisions, but ultimately it's your goal or wherever you end up, it's coming from there too. So I don't know. Songs mean to each person whatever it means. So
I thought it was a great tune. I for the life of me couldn't remember that I'd ever heard it, which is the beauty of these playlists. We say it over and over again, but yeah, I knew the Allman Brothers, greatest hits kind of stuff tied to the whipping post and that kind of stuff. But I had not remembered this song. It is just a phenomenal song. It really highlights how great Dickie Betts and the Allman Brothers were. I mean, just perfectly crafted song, beautiful melody, beautiful lyric. Um, just had everything to it. I found myself going back and listening to this song several times on this playlist because it just it epitomized what they were about. But we've mentioned this before as well. They were Southern rock, and they were the start of that whole Southern rock, with with uh, Leonard Skinner and other bands, that followed, that they were right there. And I think we put Ramblin' Man on one of our other ones where we had he had passed away, and yeah, just a huge loss to the music community for sure. But applaud Jose. That was great choice, great song, definitely.
Well,
And then
all I'll say is I'll just contend that uh, I'll just be such a contrarian. Allman Brothers are not Southern rock. Okay, just leave it at that. We'll move on. Move on, Dave.
yeah, all right. What are they? Rock and roll,
Rhythm and blues, they're rock
rhythm
and
and
roll, but
blues, rock and roll.
well, they
kind
early
of
on, if you listen to their box set, they did some psychedelic stuff. I guess they're kind of thought of it. I mean, there's some things that elements of Southern rock you can
well,
definitely play, and plus they were from Atlanta, or at least Georgia, Macon, wherever they were from.
Maybe they weren't
Yeah.
commercial Southern rock. Yeah.
well, it's easy to label any group, and kind of try to keep them in that realm because it's easier for people just to identify, like, oh, look, great, Allman Brothers, Southern rock, But it's like Mike, if you really listen to a lot of their different songs, you know, Tied to the Whipping Post has nothing to do with Southern rock. Sure, Mountain Jam, uh, Ramblin' Man, yeah, because like you said, they have a Southern accent. But listen to the music, and if you can say that that's Southern rock at some point, like I said, and believe me, Mike, there are thousands of bootlegs with Mountain Jam that go for 20 minutes. So ain't no Southern rock about that.
Well, the next song you could argue what is Me and Bobby McGee by Chris Christopherson. At the beginning of this version of the song, he says, to play you a country song here, right? Here's a country song.
That's right. Yeah.
It almost sounded like he was arguing with somebody
Yeah.
or who's been criticizing him for saying that's a country song. And it cuts on, and then he's like, yeah, whatever.
Right. And I put on Chris Christopherson earlier this year with Sunday Morning Coming Down, and didn't anticipate that he was going to pass away, but he did, and I thought there's a lot of other songs I could pick, but I just said let me go with probably his signature song, the song that that he wrote. Obviously, Janis Joplin made it famous and everything, but when you listen to it with stripped down with just him singing it, it just highlights to me what a fantastic song, what a great lyric, what a great artist, what a great all of that, listening to it. And there are a lot of artists like that that gave their songs to other people to make famous. We were just talking about the Bob Dylan movie that just came out, and he did that early on in his career, really throughout his career. People covered his songs and made him famous. And then you didn't, you go back later and you go, oh, he wrote "Blowing in the Wind." I thought that was Peter, Paul, and Mary or whatever. Same thing with Chris Christopherson. He didn't get the notoriety early in his career. The people who knew him did. The people that were his friends did. The Johnny Cashes and the Willie Nelsons and the Waylon Jennings and all the other artists, they knew who he was, but he wasn't cranking out those hits under his name as much. And I think that's why I like him so much. He's just Chris Christopherson. And then he became an actor and he did other things with that too. But I like the stripped down version of Me and Bobby McGee.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy I admire the most. The kind of guy who was in the Rhodes Scholar, smart enough to be a Rhodes Scholar, joins the army, and fights in Vietnam, becomes a songwriter, becomes an actor. This guy is living his life to his fullest, and the talent to back it up, which is amazing unto itself. How many guys can you name? Singer, songwriter, was in the army, was a Rhodes, his resume is just so impressive and was good at everything he did. So, he backed it up, and so I admire guys like that who want to live life to their fullest. They're not afraid to do the things that they want to do, not what society tells them to do. Because I'm sure, oh, be a Rhodes Scholar, grow up, be rich, you got the world. No, I'm going to join the army, and then, oh, I'm going to be an actor. Oh, I can write songs to make a living. And like my Dave said, admired by his peers, and just such a great guy. And obviously, this song was first introduced to me by obviously Janis Joplin. My dad had this album; you heard it on the radio all the time, Janis. And then when I got into the Grateful Dead used to cover it, and so you're like, oh. And of course, there's a reason it is a great song because they give you that lyric. Freedom is just another word for nothing left. Just a great lyric, nothing left to lose, and just some great lyrics in that song. And you identify with the song back then. Traveling with somebody, traveling with your buddy, getting by, enjoying little things in life, or and things like that. And I think that's why this song resonates. And I think Chris Christopherson knew how to identify with how people identified with.
Yeah, I don't know what I can add to what you guys said because I agree with all of it. Immense talent. This song is just, there's certain songs that they kind of rise above everything else, and there's few of them like that. And I'm not talking about classical music, whatever, just this type of singer-songwriter or, whatever, some rock songs, whatever. But this one is just like, you can't touch it. It's just like this great song. It's a little story. Janis Joplin, I guess we all heard it from her first. And she definitely puts her seal on it, her own sound. But just him on guitar, you're right. It's just great. Story, they're hitchhiking, he's with this girl, and then at the end, he makes a mistake of letting her slip away, which I think in a way, maybe I put on a song before Bees Wing by Richard Thompson, and I think it was inspired by this, if not this song directly, this kind of idea. It's same kind of thing, but I don't want to get away from that. The other thing about Chris Christopherson that I don't even remember what the benefit was, or maybe it might have been the Bob Dylan concert where all these different artists came together a couple of decades ago. But one of the artists was Sinead O'Connor, and I don't want to get too far afield, but she came out. It was right after, very soon after, she torn up the picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live, and just was hated by many people for that. Violent anger over that, and so she came out. She was on this show, this performance. She comes out and starts to sing a song, and people are just hurling profanity and booing her off the stage, and she's trying to be brave, but she eventually breaks down crying, and he comes out and comforts her and kind of gives a look to the audience and takes her back with Chris Christopherson. And I always, if his music didn't stand alone, I thought that was such a impressive and kind of ballsy thing to do when somebody's clearly not low on the public's liking. So I thought that was great. This song, again, I can't say anything else that hadn't been said. But I appreciate you putting it on. The only other one he'd had the song "Why Me, Lord." The lyrics are something like, "Lord, help me, Jesus. I've wasted it so," or whatever. Basically, he's like, what do I deserve? Any support, devotion, whatever from a higher power. What I'm just this sinner, And I always thought that was a great song. If you haven't heard it, check it out. But okay, so yeah, my choice after this might be a little controversial in that it was J.D. Souther, and it was a song that was a duet with James Taylor called "Her Town Too." And the reason I say it might be controversial is because J.D. Souther also did things with the Eagles, like "Best of My Love," "Heartache Tonight," "New Kid in Town," and then he had a solo hit, "Only Lonely," something like that. And yeah, those are great songs, and I will concede that. But I've heard those so many times, and this one, I like it too. I like James Taylor. It's about two people that have recently split, who grew up in this town and lived together, but now they're apart, and neither of them can really face the mutual friends or whatever. And I think they both wrote it, but it was definitely during a period where James Taylor was going through a breakup from Carly Simon. Was on the verge of that, but you hear his singing. They, like I said, it's kind of a duet, but he comes through a lot. It's not a James Taylor song. And so I just wanted to put something on there by him because he did so many great songs. He was at the Eagles for several years, and but I don't know. I want to do something a little different. So I'm curious what you guys think about that choice in this song.
Well, I'm glad you put them on. This is another great example of somebody maybe who doesn't get all the notoriety, but cranked out several great hit songs, like you said, for the Eagles. And I was familiar with this one with Her Town too, so I was actually glad you put it on. I hadn't remembered that it was him and J.D. Souther. But no, he's a great artist. He's definitely going to be missed. This was a good, I think, representation of his talents as well. Like I said, you could put on all the Eagles stuff that he did as well, but I thought it was a good choice, and I think it went great after me and Bobby McGee. We kind of went into Seven Turns, and then me and Bobby McGee and Her Town too all kind of flowed together. So thought it was a good choice.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. Fantastic. So Southern is part of the California scene. He's not the Eagles. He's not Linda Ronstadt, but he was the force behind a lot of those people. Linda Ronstadt. I mean, he was asked to join the Eagles and turned it down. So because he wanted to do his own thing, but he is West Coast rock as West Coast rock can get. And as Dave said, we find some people on this list that sure there are Chris Christophersons, but there are a lot more J.D. Southerns out there who are really powers behind a lot of this stuff that pass away, that don't get the notoriety or the recognition that is deserved, and he's one of them. I mean, like I said, we don't get. I'm sure it'll happen at some point, but this wave of the Eagles and all those songs and all up and down the West, especially LA music. It was him, and we'll find out later from some other people. I could have doubled up on some of these other session guys that played with Southern. So yeah, just a fantastic choice, and kind of leads into my selection of John Mayhall. John Mayhall isn't. So if you know, you know, because people who know rock and roll because John Mayhall was kind of the blues guy that Eric Clapton kind of cut his teeth with, um, Peter Green, so he he kind of. It's funny, and a lot of people have said this. It's funny that an English guy has to promote American blues more so than Americans did and made it more popular. And of course, this would of course lead to eventually the Yardbird, all the song, Led Zeppelin, all those groups. So Mayhall is one of those, but he was pure blues. And of course, like I said, Eric Clapton kind of see. I had a couple albums because you would hear when you're collecting albums or like, oh, Eric Clapton played from him from 66, 65 to 67. And then Peter Green, who would eventually do Fleetwood Mac, played with him, after that. And so he brought uh, the certain blues standard that would become eventually rock and roll, modern rock and roll, and the 70s just electrified. But he stuck to his guns. I always give him credit for that. And this song I really like, The Hard Road, because it kind of fits in if me, who's been through this, you go into town and you get divorced and there's a small town. Yeah, certain people pick sides. So it's a hard road. So it led right into my song perfectly. So uh, what'd you think?
Let's see, this is it's my turn, sorry.
That's right.
Yeah, no, John Mayall, I mean, yeah, he was such a force behind these musicians and what became, a big part of the British invasion and then just British rock which influenced back to the US as blues music and such. Early rock and roll went to England, and that influenced these groups that then went on back to influence American groups. And that's just a powerful thing this guy did. And yeah, you're right. It's like, did he get the glory and everything? Well, among groups of people, if you know, like you said, but no, he was really kind of this force that almost like well, I don't want to belittle his musicianship by saying like a training school for some of these great guys, but in a way he was. I mean, yeah, Clapton, he
I
became
forgot
what he became after
Mick
this.
Taylor of the Mick Taylor of the Rolling Stones also played with him. So
And I like that you mentioned Peter Green too, because when people think of Fleetwood Mac, he was gone before they really became the Fleetwood Mac that people know. He kind of left at a certain period, but there was some great stuff during that time, and it was very blues oriented. And some of it kind of weird, but it was awesome. And I'm sure it came from that experience. So, yeah, good guy to include. Thank you, Jose.
And I'm not, like I said, John Mayall's not, in my top playlist, wherever I know of them. And I guess you have to have a hard road or a hard life or some experiences to be able to play the blues, right? You can't just make that stuff up. It has to be based on things you've experienced, and in order to be to really get into the blues. And I thought the song was a great choice. Again, I wasn't familiar with it, but it flowed well into on the playlist. Kind of took us in a little bit of a different direction at that point. So yeah, I liked it. After that, I think at this point, I wasn't sure what to follow with that. Sometimes you just go, I don't know, I'm just gonna have to pick another song. Um, and I don't know why this song popped into my head. I looked at the list of those people who had passed away, and it's not like I was a Greg Kihn fan club or went to his concerts or bought his albums or anything. I just knew a couple of songs, and this was one of them. and this was his song, the breakup song in the mid '80s. And I just go, man, I like that. Every time I hear that song, I like it, and I don't know why. It's not there's nothing fancy about it, but it's they don't ride 'em like that anymore. It's just a catchy song. It's a catchy tune. It's got a good hook, and it was popular. And I'm like, man, this Greg Kinn guy, he's going to make it onto my memory list. And maybe in the coming weeks, I'll go back and listen to some more Greg Kinn and stuff. But yeah, I just felt like this one song needed to get on the list.
Now leave it to Dave to find that one. And I agree. When you hear that song, you're into it. It's just one of those songs you're like, oh yeah, I haven't heard this in a long time. Yeah, if you hear it 1,000 times, okay, you might go a little bonkers. But yeah, Greg Kinn, and I guess he had a pretty good career. Again, wasn't in our world, wasn't in our realm, but we knew who he was. If we know your name, he's obviously doing something, and being popular. And this song, like you said, you couldn't escape the song. And I have to admit, it's one of those songs that you knew if you were growing up in that era, you knew this song.
Was it on MTV? Was it that
Oh
time?
yeah,
It must have been.
it had to have been. Yeah, but the funny thing is, it's like I didn't know it's called the breakup song. I guess I did, but I really didn't until you see it. And they're like, oh yeah, because you're always singing the lyrics to it. They just don't write like song, which is a nice lyric, right? And it's it's a good hook, and it works. And so yeah, I had no problem with it. In fact, I enjoyed it when I'd come on the playlist when I'd be listening. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. This is a really catchy tune that was really popular, when we were growing up.
Yeah, it takes you back to high school. It was on the radio a lot back then. I would think we'd be remiss in not mentioning his other song that got a lot of airplay, which I don't know if this is the exact title, but it's Our Love's in Jeopardy.
Oh
You know the
right.
song Our Love's in Jeopardy, baby. Ooh. But of course, I think it almost was overshadowed by Weird Al's Yankovic's version, which was I Lost on Jeopardy. Which to this day, I kind of forget, I get them mixed up in my head. But yeah, he does both those songs really. I mean, I remember a specific moment being at the Lake Texoma, up on the Oklahoma-Texas border, and this is playing off the car radio or out doing barbecue or whatever we were doing. So yeah, it's good that you got him in here. I went then
Well, before
with.
you start, could you sing
Oh,
that
sure, sure.
Jeopardy? Could you sing that Jeopardy lyric again, Mike? It sounded pretty catchy.
The Jeff,
I did not do it. I did like spoken word version,
I
right?
think I remember that song. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I
But
do
like you
remember
said,
the video of his song, his
I
version
lost
of
on
it.
Jeopardy, but yeah,
Yeah.
my life's in jeopardy. But yeah, you did. It got overshadowed for sure, by Weird Al's "I Lost on Jeopardy."
And then Greg Kinn's video of the original song, yeah, I remember it involved some kind I Loves in Jeopardy. There's some kind of like monster and these long arms. And that was on MTV. I can barely remember it, but there was some kind of, he's trying to do some kind of creepy, scary thing on it. I'll have to look it up now that I brought it up. Hopefully I'm not wrong.
No,
So yeah, so then I went on to one that I was sad to hear this. Well, first I'll tell you the song is Young Americans by David Bowie. And no, David Bowie passed away a few years ago. But like some of these others, this is a musician who played on one of the songs. He wasn't in his band regularly, but he played David Sanborn. He played on so many different people's music, and he did. I mean, he was a really good sax player. His stuff kind of tended toward what you might call smooth jazz, which is less my thing of interest. But I'm not. There's some really good stuff in there too. I had one of his cassettes, but he was the sax player on Young Americans, and if you know that song, you'll immediately know what I'm talking about. It's like besides the drums, it's like the lead end of the song is very prominent. To me, it almost makes that song. And then he plays a little bit later. So yeah, he died. He had a show, like I said, he played on so many different records. I don't have any of them in front of me. I think he played with Steely Dan. Of course, everybody played with them for on a song, but he had this show called Night Music that was basically syndicated. It was only on for a couple of seasons, but it was amazing. It was like I've been trying to find like a copy of these shows to watch because he was the host. He'd be out there with his sax, and he would have all these just like incredible musicians. Like I think one time it was Richard Thompson and it might have been Adrian Belew, somebody like that, and Screaming Jay Hawkins. And this whole, they do one by one, they each do their thing and they come out and do an ensemble number and just this amazing talent all at once. And it was kind of, he was kind of like the band leader. Everybody did a little solo and then he did a sax solo. But that was just such a great contribution. It was a shame it didn't last longer than it did. But check out, look up some of the songs he's on and check them out.
Yeah, I got excited at the song just because it was a David Bowie song, and you always like that. But then again, as I said at the very beginning, you got to kind of listen for the musician that's doing that. Probably couldn't put David Sanborn out of the lineup necessarily, but I know he was again in a lot of those groups playing saxophone. I read where he had, I guess, started back in the '60s, early '70s with Paul Butterfield Blues Band. I guess he was in there. That was one of the bands he started with, and yeah, just a smooth sax player for sure. I think sax players probably don't get the credit that they deserve. We could probably do a whole playlist on just those great sax players. But it's good that you're honoring him and showing that hey, it's not just the lead singer and the person out in front that's getting all the attention. And so anyway, great song by David Bowie and great sax part as well.
Oh yeah, well, Sanborn wasn't, and Mike knows fully this. He was on Letterman, right? He was always a guest
Yes,
Letterman
that's
all
right.
the time, and that's how you became. And he would interact with Letterman, which was one of the few guys that would interact, minus Paul, of course. And so you're like, oh, who is this guy? And then, of course, like that's how I kind of got introduced to him through Letterman. And you know, like Mike Dave says, you don't know who the sax player is on Young American when you're growing up. You just know that it's good. It's like listening to Money. You don't know the sax player on there. You eventually find out who it is, but yeah, when you're growing up, but man, it makes the song. And Young Americans, first of all, that song is just that's a classic. I think it was my favorite song listening on this. Every time I'd be singing along, you knew the lyrics and stuff like that. But going back to Sanborn, yeah, I knew him from Letterman, and then he had that show, and I watched that show. You'd have to find it. It would come on at like 12:30 at
Yeah.
night, and I lived on the East Coast, so it'd be like you'd have to DVR to find it. But man, just fantastic music coming out. So that's how I kind of learned to respect. Sanborn and what he did. And of course, being on Letterman all the time didn't hurt his cause either. I don't know if he was on SNL. He might have been, but I don't remember if he was or not. But just, it's like Bobby Keys. Mike knows Bobby Keys. We know, but he's the guy who did a lot of Rolling Stone, he's been a lot of stuff. Another saxophone player, rock and roll saxophone player. Just made a lot of songs that much better, and Sanborn was one of those guys. And I do highly recommend if you go back listen to Paul Butterfield Blues Band back in the day. That's just if you haven't heard Paul Butterfield, it's great stuff. So of course, because we're in this realm of switching up, I really went all the way to the other side, and I went with Paul Di'Anno, who was the original lead singer for Iron Maiden. Now, I grew up listening to heavy metal. I loved my heavy metal when I was growing up, and Iron Maiden was just right in that phase. And as I would listen to new groups, and I'd have my Black Sabbath, but the Iron Maiden was kind of introduced in '79, and Paul Di'Anno was their first singer, and he did 2 albums, and then of course for whatever reasons, a lot of reasons, he just didn't get along with him, and so they got rid of him, and they eventually got Bruce Dickinson, which most people know is the lead singer of Iron Maiden. But for me, Paul Di'Anno and those first 2 albums laid the foundation for what not only Iron Maiden was going to become, but for what a lot of heavy metal was going to be for the next 10 years, 20 years, because dual guitar, changing tempos, Iron Maiden was kind of one of the ones who introduced a lot of that and a lot of clever songs. And so, and Killers, it's just a heavy metal song. Of course, it's about a serial killer, so I don't know what that has what that says about me, but he had a lot of other great songs. Running Free, Murders in the Rue Morgue. If you're an Iron Maiden fan, you know those are just classic songs that they sang even after he left because they were so good. And so I just thought I'd throw him on there because he was an influence in my life.
Can I ask you a real quick question? So Murders in the Rue Morgue, is that based on the Edgar Allan Poe story?
Oh yeah,
So now I'm
but
gonna
it's
have to check it out.
right, but it's heavy metal, you know. It's dueling guitars, heavy bass riff, right? I always call it like getting on a runaway freight train, so to speak. Sometimes that Iron Maiden will take you on that, you know, on that journey. So yeah,
Well, I'll just full disclosure, if you've watched some of these before, you know by now that I didn't really have much background in heavy metal. I know a lot of people listen to Iron Maiden that I knew, so I heard a lot of it. I didn't know this song, and I couldn't tell you the members. I could tell you about Eddie, the the fella that's probably on their stage and on many of their records. But this song, yeah, what a menacing character this fella is in this song. It's like, whoa, okay. There's no real light note in here. It's like this guy's out there, Jack the Ripper, who knows? But
right, killing people.
yeah, and they do. I mean, the music fits the topic absolutely. It was, I'll give it its due. And I'm not saying it's just not what I normally listen to. But again, as we've talked about before, it really is good to look outside, move outside your box, whatever. And who would have thought I'd like a Billie Eilish song or, Taylor Swift, but I have through this thing, and it's the same. This isn't the first. I think you put on something, David, was it Coverfield? Am I
Yeah,
saying his name?
Cloverdale,
Cloverdale. Sorry,
White
guys.
Sands.
Sorry, guys. I'm making heavy metal fans roll over in their graves. So I do need to check out more of this stuff, particularly this band, because I know a lot of people who like them.
Like you were saying, we're gonna have to do a heavy metal playlist at some point, because there was a period of time where I was headbanging quite a bit, but it wasn't early Iron Maiden. It was 82, 83 is when I started listening to them. And went to I think one of the early show concerts I went to, probably in the first, maybe in the first 10 concerts I ever went to. I went to, I think it was Scorpions, Iron Maiden, and Girls School
Yeah,
was the
Girls
lineup
School.
there.
Yeah, you were with me.
And
It was Girls School, Iron Maiden, Scorpions. Iron Maiden wasn't even opening, and then we went next year, and Iron Maiden was opening. So yeah,
right. So I've seen him a couple times, and again, I'm more from that 82, 83 time frame, started listening to him. So I wasn't really familiar with the early one. And I probably wouldn't have, if you'd told me that Paul Di'Anno was a lead singer, I wouldn't have known that. I grew up with I started with Bruce Dickinson, and that's what I latched onto. So I'll have to go back and listen to some of the early Maiden, because as you said, they were pioneers in heavy metal and rock and what they did, and they're still rocking today. Even from what I
yeah,
can see, they're still touring, and they've come through here the last few years as well. I have a friend of mine who I work with, and he's been like, every time they come, he's like, "Man, Duke, you got to come with me. You got to go with me." And something's going on every time. I'm like, no, I can't make it or whatever. But he's gone the last 2 years with to see him. So maybe this next year when they come, I'll go check him out. But from there, I decided just to go 180. Let's let's go from heavy metal to brand new key Melanie from the early 70s. And I couldn't tell you anything that Melanie did other than the fact that she wrote this song, and I've listened to it and liked it and sung it and everything for many years. And so when I saw that she had passed away, I said, "Oh, I'd probably be good to remember her and put on one of her songs." So put on Brand New Key. It became a very popular song back in the day for a complete contrast from Iron Maiden.
Ah, yeah, Melanie. I'll just say is obviously this was a song that was around. Even I know this song, and I don't even know why I know this song. I don't even remember where I heard it, but it became part of our world for whatever reason. I'm gonna blame payola. So no, I'm just kidding. It's a catchy song, and I know nothing about Melanie, but it's a catchy song, and even I knew it. And I think I remember singing it when I travel on a church bus with some other people. Everyone knew this song, and but why? Who's Melanie? And I don't remember any other time seeing her or looking at it. And then of course I joked this past weekend when I went to Half Price and there was a Melanie's Greatest Hits. Wait a minute, she had more than one song? Who is this Melanie? So I found it amusing, but again, I love that Dave always brings us back a little, brings us back to what, yeah, sometimes the standards is what you enjoy. And so yeah, this was one of those. So good little tribute to Melanie.
Yeah, I remember this from probably first grade. I think that's about the time period, maybe a little bit later. And coincidentally, this happened. Okay, so I listened to syndicated old American Top 40 with Casey Kasem, and we did this 1974 playlist, and Cats in the Cradle was on it, and that came on the thing. The other day, I was listening to it, and this song came on. I've got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. And I'm like, okay, well, it must be meant to be. But I'm like, I remember that song. It fit right in with that time. What was I going to say? Well, one thing I read it after this got on our list. I read something about her where she was saying that there was no intentional sexual innuendo in that song, and I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't. I got to disagree.
Oh,
There's like more than one, not just the roller skate and the key, but there's more than, I don't know, but whatever. We'll trust her. We'll take her at her word. It's a fun little song. It is one that was played a lot, and it's a novelty song. And one other thing I'll mention, it was on the soundtrack to Reservoir Dogs, which had a lot of other kind of, you know, songs from that era, like Stuck in the Middle with You by Steelers Will and Coconut by Harry Nilsson. And so I had when that came out, I saw the movie, and I had the CD, I believe. And so this song, would make the rotation. So, um, and let's see, am I confusing that, or was that on, now I may be wrong. Was it Reservoir Dogs or was it Pulp Fiction?
I think it was on Reservoir, right?
Okay. All right. Anyway, both good movies. Check them out. So from there, I'm like, well, okay. I wanted to do Quincy Jones. He really needs to be honored here, as if he hasn't gotten so many honors. But we lost him this last year, not too long ago, and he did. So I just thought it would maybe fit in. Of all the things he did, I thought it maybe fit in a little better with this. If you didn't know it, he did the Sanford and Son theme song, which if you hear it and you're from that era or have seen it in syndication, you'll know it immediately. The song's actually called "The Street Beater," but and like Jose, you were saying when I put this on here, it's like I wasn't aware that was a 3 minute song. And it is, it's like the intro, the outro, the opening credits, the closing credits, and then some other stuff in the middle. And it's a cool song. If you heard it without the show, I don't know what I would think, but I would think it was an interesting song. But it's, he wrote that. And so I thought, I was kind of having a little fun here, but I would be remiss without mentioning, among other things, he produced many great, landmark albums. This was for Michael Jackson, Thriller, Bad, and Off the Wall, which, I mean, who doesn't know those? And We Are the World. He was kind of the force behind that. I think he maybe wrote the song too. I'm not sure. He also did soundtracks for many, many movies. And Jose, you had mentioned that, well, Sinatra, he got behind many artists and helped them along. But movies he did the music for is like In Cold Blood, In the Heat of the Night, the Italian Job, the original Italian Job with Benny Hill and other people in it, Cactus Flower, Out of Towners, so on and so on. I was going to put on the theme song, the title song for In the Heat of the Night, which is sung by Ray Charles, which I think is a very powerful song. But I went a different way. So
Wow, what do you say about Quincy Jones? I mean, well, he was in his 90s, wasn't he? When he passed
so.
away. So he had lived a long, full life. I think it was 91. And as you chronicled so well, Mike, all the things that he did, I will tell you that every now and then we tend to not know what the other person's going to put on. And I wasn't like I knew all of Quincy Jones and all this stuff either. But I had, if you didn't play that song, my next song choice was going to be, don't cringe. It was going to be We Are the World. Uh, and he didn't write it. It was Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie actually penned it. But the fact that he put all these singers together, and I love the song, and I listen to it, and I love all the voices, and the voices are now perfectly where they need to be now. You can't ever change that song. When you hear Bob Dylan, or you hear Bruce Springsteen, or you hear Huey Lewis, or whoever else, all the people that are on there, you know who they are, and it's right where they need to be in the song. And he produced that. He made it so that it was that iconic anthem at the time. And so it was going to make the playlist. If it doesn't now, it may make it in the future, just because I've been wanting to put on We Are the World at some point. And Quincy Jones, it would have been a great place to pay homage to him. But we all love the Sanford and Son theme song. All the 70s sitcoms that we grew up on, they're embedded in our minds now. I mean, I can't not know that one. I can't not know the Jeffersons theme song, or Archie, the All in the Family, or all the other ones. We know all of the theme songs from that era, because we watched so much 70s sitcoms at the time. So it was a good choice. I liked it because again, one way or the other, we needed to pay some memory to Quincy Jones for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I talked to Mike about this, so he knows that, you know, you could argue that Quincy Jones is probably one of the top 5 composers of the late 20th century. I mean, if not the greatest influence on music in the later 20th century. So it's kind of funny when Mike puts on Sanford and Son, because you're like, oh wait, it's some silly sitcom that lasted from, but that song, it came to me because as I was thinking, why should Sanford and Son theme be on there instead of, like you said, We Are the World or something off Thriller, but why not? It caters to the masses. He knows what is good, and everyone knows that song. You go probably to China, and I'm sure someone hears that thing and hears that song. Hell, Fish used to cover that song. It's just one of those songs that's out there that We used to have neighbors that I think they had some garage band, and they were playing that song. We used to call them Sanford and Son, by the way, our neighbors who used to be a band. So I have no problem with Sanford and Son theme song as it, because Quincy Jones did deliver music to the masses, and that's what he did best. And whether it was in the 50s with Sinatra, or his movies, or We Are the World, or working with Michael Jackson, or whomever he worked with, he delivered, and he always delivered, and people loved him for it. So yeah, I thought it was a fun choice, and it's a fun choice to hear that song. So
Every time I'm driving around and I see a truck with a whole bunch of stuff in it, I don't think of Red Fox necessarily. I think of the song. When I
right.
see a truck with stuff piled up in it, I'm like dun 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 dun. I mean, it just goes with it.
I probably don't know anyone who doesn't know has done that before. Go dun dun dun. I've seen some junky place and immediately burst into that scene song. That's how iconic. It's like, oh look, ba, 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 right? We all do
Sure.
it. So it's a great choice. It's funny, you know. Initially, you want to get on your high horse, and I'm sure some people will, like, oh yeah, it's Quincy Jones. He did, yeah. But no, hell, he worked with Count Basie. No, this is what he was. Music for people, makes people happy. That's what it's all about, and that's what he
We
did.
we
So,
do
uh,
we need to do a playlist on theme songs from TV shows. So that would be a lot of fun.
that'd be good.
Yeah,
So,
there's definitely some good ones. And I appreciate you guys' kindness about this. After I did it, I was like, I thought it really fit well after roller skate key. But later I'm like, oh, did I mess up? But you know
no,
what? I'm gonna stand by it.
Good.
We know all the other
That's all
stuff he
good.
did, and anybody who wants to hear it can check it out. Consider it a gateway to his music. It only
that's
just
what
goes up from there.
yeah, that's what this playlist is about. It's our playlist, and it's what we do. And let's face it, it's who cares? Yeah, Sanford and Son, love it. I don't say
Wheezy? Well, no, Wheezy was Jefferson's. What did he always? This is it. This is the big one. Fred Fox's
Elizabeth.
character.
I'm coming.
Elizabeth.
Wheezy. Who's it? Who is his wife?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. I'm coming, Elizabeth.
And who they like, you big dummy? And 5 of
Yeah.
these across your face. Oh, that's all. That show was just an iconic show. So moving on from Quincy Jones, who was really at the forefront, to a guy who really wasn't at the forefront. But it's like I told Dave before we started this, I've heard this growing up. Well, when we listened to Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I must have heard this guy's name 1,000 times. And so when you hear it, it was on, he was with Johnny Barbada. He's a drummer, and he was on Four Way Street. He had joined Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young on their tour in 1970. And at the end of Carry On, I think it's Carry On, they mention his name. You know, like, you don't know these guys, but they're smoking and Johnny Barbada. And you're like, oh, but you didn't think about it because all you cared about was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But you come to find out Johnny Barbada was, man, he was one of those guys behind the scenes. He first started out with the Turtles. He played on Happy Together. Everyone knows. I should have probably played that song. But I know him more as with Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, and he worked with them, Crosby, Nash, and he was part of that West Coast world with J.D. Southern, all those guys. He was one of those session guys. You know, I'm sure Dave can mention the Les Kunkles and all these guys that we used to read, as session musicians, and he just happened to be one of them. And so I thought I'd pay tribute to this guy because really, not knowing it, he's probably been played on a lot of songs that I didn't even know he was playing because he was also in Jefferson Starship, or tail end of Jefferson Airplane, part of Jefferson Starship. So obviously he had a pretty illustrious career, but he's one of those guys that falls into the realm of in the background. Doesn't reach the elevated status of a John Bonham or anything like that, but just a a, a solid musician who provided a lot of solid music for. And if let's face it, if they're picking you to work with them, you must be doing something right.
Yeah, exactly what you just said. They were very, I wouldn't call them all temperamental, but they were very particular about the quality of their music. I mean, particularly Neil Young, but in this case, Graham Nash, I Used to Be King. It, these guys in the background, these guys that really support the band and make the song, that you're right, they don't get credit. It's like this band, the Wrecking Crew. There's a group of session musicians that played on, you would not believe everything it played on. And do many people outside music fans know them? No, but that song wouldn't exist without these guys anyway, no matter who the musician was in front. And same with this. And I'm glad you put it on, just about the song. I love Graham Nash. I think we may have had this before back in the tape days. I don't know, but I definitely knew it.
It's my favorite Graham Nash song. So,
and it's sad. Somebody just after a hard breakup. I think I wonder if all his breakup songs are about Joni Mitchell. I don't know, but I know she brought him down hard. But it's a beautiful sad song, and I appreciate you putting it on there.
Yeah, I love this song. I mean, I Used to Be a King is one of my favorite Graham Nash songs. I think we did put it on tape back in the day. Wasn't, I kind of remembered you know, the person, but you had to kind of remind me that they had mentioned him on Four Way Street, and he had played with a lot of them. Um, Again, it gets shows to you can highlight these session musicians. Mike brought up the Wrecking Crew and a documentary on a lot of those folks in the 70s where the artists were like, no, I gotta have this person as my backup band or this person on the road when I tour. And it was Leyland Sklar and Russ Kunkel and Craig Dirge and those guys that played with Jackson Brown, and they played with the Eagles, and they played with, just so many of the groups in the 70s, James Taylor. And they made a name for themselves. I think they're actually producing music on their own now as a group, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's good that you paid homage to him. He'll be missed for sure. Great drummer. Um, like I said, if we could isolate and just listen to his parts, you'd realize how intricate and things they are. Drummers don't get a lot of credit. I mean, the main big time drummers do, but all the other ones don't until you hear a documentary or you see something and they go and the artist says, "Oh no, let me tell you about so and so," and then you start breaking down how intricate their drum beats are and how different they are, and that's when you start really appreciating what they do. So anyway, great song though, great song choice. Then it was my turn. Then my last selection. Probably could have gone with a lot of different other artists, but again, I'm a singer. I love the singer songwriters. I love that whole vibe. And so this song, "Please Come to Boston" by Dave Loggins, I felt like needed to make it, even though again I wasn't a huge Dave Loggins fan. I probably couldn't pick out a lot of the other songs that he did over his career. I did do a little research. He was the second cousin of Kenny Loggins, so there was some relation there. I didn't know that he was actually related to Kenny Loggins. Um, but this was his one hit wonder, you might say. He had a couple other tunes that he did. I think he did a duet with Anne Murray and some other things like that, and wrote some other songs. I think he wrote. Oh, he wrote the song, and I put it on the In Memory last year when we did the Jimmy Buffett song.
Yeah,
Memory. He wrote the song "Come Monday."
on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't
Really?
I didn't realize that. So I actually paid tribute to him twice because last year we did Jimmy Buffett, and he wrote the song "Come Monday" for Jimmy Buffett. So
Yeah, I didn't think I knew this song until what's the line of there about Tennessee? I'm the man with the. Then I know that. Then you know that line. Initially, I was like, "What's this song?" I don't know where Dave is coming up with this song and who this guy is. But once you hear that line, you're like, "Oh, that's right. That's this guy." And like you said, it was a song that you listened to, and it was a nice song, And it was like you said, one of those. Sure, he's not the more famous Loggins, but this song really had an impact growing up. It's like the Melanie song. It's songs that just enter your stratosphere, so to speak, and then it becomes a part, and then you learn them, and you learn to like them. Sometimes you hear them too much and learn to hate them, but not this song. And I thought it was a good little tribute to again another guy who, like a Melanie, puts out a song, becomes I don't know how integral part of your life, but becomes part of your life, and then just kind of lays there. But every time you hear it puts a smile on your face. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty good song.
Yeah, okay, so I said this a few minutes ago, and well, my wife and I went up to Colleen to have a meal with some friends, and driving back, I turn on Classic American Top 40, and what did I hear on the drive back to do this video? But please come to Boston. So it was definitely out there, and I remember it. I remember where I lived when it was on the radio, and there's not much else I can add. Although about the song, it's like, dude, go back to this girl. Forget
Right.
Boston. Forget it. She wants you. She loves you. What are you doing, you idiot? Anyway, I wonder if he ever went back to Tennessee. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But yeah, I have a lot of memories of that song. So I closed with a song called "Thank You World" by World Party. They were a band I got into in the kind of their peak was late 80s, early 90s. They did two albums that I actually did three albums that I had and that I listened to all the time. And so the singer, the guy who played, wrote the song, sang on them, played almost all the instrumentation through multi-tracking. There's a guy named Carl Wallinger. And there were some other musicians that were on there too, but it was mainly him. So this song was off, was it Goodbye Jumbo, I think was the name of the record. But before that, he had the song Ship of Fools, which I don't know. It seems like Dave, way back in the day, you may have actually turned me on to that song or something. I remember somehow related to you. Then went on to have some of the songs Way Down Now, Put the Message in a Box, that sort of thing. They got some airplay in the early 90s, but they were just, just real good, influenced by the Beatles and that kind of music, and a lot of message about the environment and not so great political leaders and things like that, and some love songs and such. But I loved his music. He had started out in a band called the Waterboys, which is also a band I love. They're still around. He was Welsh, I think, or at least partially Wales. And that band, the Waterboys, also had some members from Wales. But they did a song that I think he wrote. I don't think he played on, or at least he partially wrote, contributed to, called World Party. And so that was the Waterboys released that as a single. I always wondered what was the connection between that and this, but I don't know. Anyway, just real quick, couple points to wrap it up. So he had a cerebral hemorrhage in 2001, and or an aneurysm, excuse me, and he basically lost the ability to speak, and he couldn't see out of one eye, and had to relearn like a lot of stuff he did. And he for 5 years the band went on a hiatus, and then they kind of came back, and then I may have my dates wrong. Anyway, later in the 2000s, he did a show. He kind of went back to live performance, and the first show was at South by Southwest here in Austin back that year. And I was fortunate enough I didn't see them, but he did a radio interview where he talked about this whole experience of having this thing to happen to his brain that really really messed him up, and he had to come back to where he could do music again. And I heard that live on the radio, which I thought was really cool knowing that. But he died this year of a stroke, whether it was related to that, I don't know. But lesser known maybe, but I love their music. So I thought Thank You World was a good way to end, a thing about people who've left us. So
What was his name again?
Carl Wallinger.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him or his music. And what instrument did he a singer, or would he play guitar?
He said we did about everything. He was like a multi-instrumentalist. But he sang. It was he was basically the band. There's some bands like Stevie Wonder did that on some records where he played like everything and sang, and he wasn't quite that, but yeah.
You had an album, Dave.
I did?
You had World Party. That's how I knew him. And like Mike said, because
I don't remember having this album.
You had a
Ship of
World
Fools?
Party. It's the only reason I know about them is because of you.
I can't remember. Well, then I fried those brain cells long ago, because I do not remember. Other than the fact that I felt like a connection to the song. I really liked the song, and I liked the way it ended our playlist and everything. So no, it was a good tune, and I'll have to go back and re-remember if I had that or not.
I'm pretty sure you
Okay,
did.
if this helps, the lyrics are like some like save me from tomorrow. I don't want to get lost on this ship of fools, which of course we're not confusing with the Grateful Dead.
No.
But if you hear it, you may remember it.
Yeah, you're the one. I'm pretty sure you had it, although it might have been a cassette. A world party.
Um,
But I know you had it. You for whatever reason, because that's the only reason I know about world
Sure,
party.
you're not confusing it with the Dream Academy or something stupid like that.
First of all, you never had the Dream Academy.
I did have
What
life
Dream
in a
Academy
northern,
did you have?
north in a lot life in a northern town. I
Did
had,
you?
yeah, I bought
I
it.
don't remember that one.
I had that one.
Oh my God, both of y'all. You must have stolen.
I know that song is like maligned, but there were some good songs in there, you
Oh
know,
my God. But
in
anyway,
that time. I wouldn't listen to it now though.
I know Dave had World Party, and I know it's that Ship of Fools, and I think I might have had the cassette or something like that. But anyway, that's how I learned. But like Dave said, it's a great way to kind of encapsulate the playlist. You know, again, another person that probably didn't get all the recognition at the same time, but we hit all the highlights, and that song, "Thank You World." Thank you to these musicians for providing all this for us, and it's such a great gift. As we go through the years and we have our ups and downs, and we always rely on music. And these are the ones who made it for us. These are the guys who established these songs that so we could enjoy. And like I said, as each year passes, we keep losing them. And unlike when we were 20, it just is so much more impactful now that you're almost thinking who's next, which is kind of scary unto itself. You hope those guys cling, and like I think Mike mentioned earlier, Dave, some of them are just keep on touring. They keep going. The love, it has to at this point be for the love of music, and that's one of the reasons, and our love of the music. So let's hope our list isn't as you never hope, but it's going to be, because it's just inevitable, because it's part of life. But I think this is one of my favorite playlists, because we do go back, more so not about the songs themselves, because they're the songs, but about the persons and the people and how they influenced us. And I like how Mike goes back to, I remember when this came out, or where I was with that came out, and some of these songs are part of that. They're woven into your life, and you just you know it's irreplaceable. So overall, a great playlist. Any last words from you, Mike?
No, like you were saying, it would be great if we didn't have a playlist to do like this next year, but that's life. And I just, we have the music. The people are gone like other artists, but we have the music. So
I think that's the thing is that good music will live on, and long past the time when the artists, we miss them, and we hope that they would continue to produce music and put out music and do that. But we have what they have done already, and when no one can take that from us, and you can always go back and listen years from now and go, oh yeah, I remember that song, I remember that artist, I remember that band. And it's a way of just that they'll be remembered long after. I mean, I hate to say it, but people aren't going to remember me and Mike and Jose. I mean, yeah, the people who are closest in our circle will, and the people in our families will, but not like this, where if you put out a song, it's out there forever. And I think that's the beauty of it. They can always go back to that and remember them.
Yeah, well said, guys. Again, happy holidays to everybody. As we enter 2025, hopefully I know our playlist will continue. We enjoy this all immensely. I don't want to speak for them, but I do. And hopefully we continue this trend, and I hope everyone else is enjoying it. So welcome to 2025, everybody.